we see it as the beginning of a conversation, continuing this process. And this session is to think about where we want to go forward collectively together. We're grateful, as I keep saying, that you've chosen to be here with us and share difficult truths and emotions as we continue to move forward together on a path of truth and reconciliation and justice. So to that end, we have representatives from each tribe who are going to speak. We're going to all talk collectively and answer to a few questions. And we also have joining us via Zoom, Dorothy Firecloud. So I'll give some brief introductions, and then I'll start with our questions. There'll be 2 questions, and then each panelist will have a moment to talk about their final thoughts. So that's where we're headed. And then you may ask any questions that you like. Okay, so I'll start with Bobby Gonzalez, who is the chairman of the Caddo Nation. He is the son of Evelyn K. Kiowa and Jose Gonzalez. Bobby was raised in Binger, Oklahoma, and attended school in Binger and Riverside Indian School. During his senior year, he married Carrie Starr, who's Kiowa Apache, and from this union, they raised 7 beautiful children. During his first tenure on the Caddo Nation Tribal Council in 1998, Bobby drafted an oil and gas resolution and was instrumental in the development of the To Bridge a Gap National Conference, during which tribes across the country met and worked with the U.S. Forest Service to strengthen government-to-government relations. Bobby has been honored with numerous awards during his career. He has worked with the Pentagon on environmental and cultural issues that affect all tribes within the United States, and was instrumental in the creation of the first 101D2 TIPO office in the state TIPO Tribal Historic Preservation Office. For those of you who don't know, we have several tribal historic preservation officers with us today, so I want to be sure you understood what I mean. The TIPO office in the state of Oklahoma. He testified before the House of Natural Resources Committee regarding federal Native American graves Protection and Repatriation Act, which you've heard about, talked about as well as NAGPRA. Compliance in Washington, D.C., and was a guest speaker in 2015 for the Department of Energy at the inaugural Tribal Energy Summit to discuss tribal concerns on issues related to energy development projects. He has worked across Indian country all over the U.S. with tribes on and off reservations to protect their interest in the environment and culture, and has authored numerous publications and journals. He is called upon on occasion by the FBI regarding looting activities on federal lands. Thank you for your service. And by the Department of Energy regarding consultation with tribes. He works with private industry, federal agencies, and with other tribal nations on large projects that affect the tribes across the U.S. He is a subject matter expert in tribal and government relations and owns the only Native-owned company that is a member of the Interstate Gas Association of America. Bobby takes great pride in his Caddo culture and remains dedicated to maintaining the core Caddo values taught by Caddo elders from among some of the last generations that spoke fluent Caddo. In 2021, he dedicated himself to the service of his beloved Caddo people, where he took office as the Caddo Nation chairman. His greatest joys in life are his faith in God, his family, children, and his many grandchildren. So, sitting next to him is Norene Starr, who we've introduced just recently as the Executive Director of Special Projects and Coordinator for the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. Seated to her left is Jacob Tsotigh, who is the Vice Chairman of the Kiowa tribe. And seated to his left is Martina Minthorn, who is the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Comanche tribe. And joining us via Zoom is Dorothy Firecloud, who we heard from briefly yesterday. As you can, here she is. So Dorothy is a member of the Zicongo Lakota Rosebud Sioux tribe of South Dakota. In October 2020, Ms. Firecloud became the Native American Affairs Liaison Assistant to the Director in the National Park Service. She's responsible for ensuring the NPS meets the requirements of the DOI, Department of Interior, policy on consultation with tribal nations, developing service-wide guidance, reviewing proposed policy and legislation to advise and support the director on issues impacting Native American, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian communities. From 2012 to 2020, she served as superintendent at 2 Puebloan NPS sites, Montezuma Castle National Monument and Tsotigh National Monument in the Verde Valley of Arizona. She first joined the National Park Service in 2006 as superintendent of Devil's Tower National Monument, a site of significant spiritual connections to her tribe. Ms. Firecloud has a Juris Doctorate from the New Mexico School of Law and has been a member of the New Mexico State Bar since 1991. And we thank you for joining us via Zoom, since impending government shutdown would not allow you to travel here with us. So welcome to all of you. We're so fortunate to have all of you here to have this conversation. And I would just first like to start out with a question that about engagement. So if you could, tell me what you think about what are the ways that we, and by we I mean the National Park Service and local academic institutions like Flagler College and UCF, how can we continue collaboration and engage in co-stewardship with Indigenous peoples? And who wants to start that?
Lori Lee turns to the panelists.
Martina, did you want?
Martina Minthorn tests her microphone.
Is it on?
Lori rushes over to Martina. Martina taps the microphone with her hand, but it isn't working. Lori brings her another microphone. Text Martina Minthorn, Historic Preservation Officer, Comanche Nation.
All right. Well, as far as consultation, I definitely appreciate the Park Service having us here, being present here, and being able to start the discussion, to be able to sharing our input, as far as being able to have interpretation, being able to tell our story from our perspective is a big factor for us. And so, like they said, having all these tourists come and you got millions of visitors and our stories not being shared, it's definitely like a slap in the face to our people that have suffered here. And so definitely I think, we were even talking about having maybe an intertribal historical marker, maybe with all our tribal logos here saying, this is where our people were brought, was just kind of maybe a suggestion. And definitely, being able to tell more stories about like the little girl that was brought here, definitely trying to, like you said, when they had the school children here, that kind of made me cry to be able to see, fourth graders seeing another little girl that was in prison here makes a big impact. And so definitely, being able to share those things, and like I said, for us, being able to go back home and being able to share these stories is also important and everything. And so for us, like I said, we live in Lawton, Oklahoma, Comanche Nation. That's where our headquarters is, and we drive through Fort Sill every day. And so driving through Fort Sill, which a lot of our stories aren't told there and everything, but there is a place where, again, when they captured us and brought us to the reservation, to the military base, Fort Sill is the oldest Indian Wars fort that's still active. And so there's a place called the Ice House, which a lot of people don't know that history. And so the Ice House was just a long building with no roof. And so they put everybody, the men all got placed in that place, in that roof, and they would just throw meat over the top, Where did they use the restroom, And it's pretty sad. And there's a picture that one of our former chairman has as his descendant of his grandmother. And so all the women camped outside, and the men were all inside the ice house. And so she put a dress on her son because she wanted to keep him with her. And so, of course, he was being a boy. He pulled his dress up to go to the restroom, and one of the soldiers seen him and trying to take him away from her. And so, and being defiant, she's fighting the officer and end up branding her face right here across her eyes has U.S. where they would brand their horses. And so as an elder woman, you still see that, but that picture's not told. Those stories aren't told. Those are in the backyard where we live at. And so here we are, hundreds of miles away from home trying to tell this story. So definitely I appreciate the Park Service having us here and being able to start these conversations and just to be able to show these stories through the ledger art. That's something that, they're sharing. The reservation area, how did we dress, how did we look, the colors that we use, these are important factors for us to be able to see, what we didn't have prior to photos. But definitely appreciate being here and definitely looking forward to building a better relationship.
I've had an opportunity to visit Colorado several times in the past year through the efforts of the NPS, National Park Service, as they have really made it a tremendous effort to implement consultation, true authentic consultation. And it's very encouraging to me to see this process being promoted by Secretary Holland. And I thank her for her leadership in helping to engage this process because as a Native American, an authentic Native American, she understands the role that has been lacking in terms of the voice of the American Indian. And it is good to see that you recognize that now, after all these years, that there is a place for us at the table, that we do have a voice, and that you are inhabiting our land. That's significant. We've lived for generations and generations in one place and have been displaced. So we have memory of that. And it's long overdue that you recognize that we have a perspective that can help you in the performance of your job. And certainly I'm encouraged by the efforts of co-management as tribes have begun to step up and take a role in considering how the policies are implemented by National Park Service in the administering of these facilities because that was our home. And for you to recognize that is of great value. And we appreciate that and are humbled that you recognize that. And we are in conversation with Wichita Mountains National Wildlife Refuge. Now the Kiowa tribe is hoping that they will allow us to house a significant number of buffalo there on their refuge property that would help us to re-emphasize that cultural component that was so critical to our well-being as a people. And we can reintroduce that and on a large scale utilizing the thousands and thousands of acres that you control. So it's very encouraging, and I appreciate the park manager for reaching out to us to help in the consideration of how to effectively use a common cohabitation of those properties.
Jacob Tsotigh, Vice Chairman, Kiowa Tribe. Norene Starr, Executive Director of Special Projects and Resources, Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes of Oklahoma, Governor's Office.
What was the question?
The question was, I see you guys are looking at me. How can, is this working? I'm very quiet. How can we, NPS and the local institutions like the colleges and the cemeteries, continue collaboration and engage in co-stewardship with the peoples?
I do think that, with the way things have worked out for the past, this is what, our 6th year? This is the 6th year, correct, Steve? Okay, with the 6th year that we put in all the work and the stuff that we've done here, my prayers and my hopes is that NPS will acknowledge that and take that to other places and allow other tribes in those particular areas to be a big part of the stories that they tell there at those sacred places. I think it's important. I think it's imperative. And I think our time is now. I think it's our time. That's who we are. And I believe, because I like to believe in good things, I believe that this is just the start, and it's not going to be just one place. And like Vice Chair was saying about, Colorado, and I know that we at Concho, at the Cheyenne Rapos, we have been working years, it seems like forever, to get Fort Reno back. and it just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And it's like we just keep hitting our heads against the wall, and again and again and again. The governor specifically said to me that a particular person who is in Congress that I won't mention said, "What are they going to do with it?" Well, what does it matter? It's ours. Doesn't matter what we do with it. It belongs to us. You know, it's no longer a fort. It's not being used as a, you know, a military base, or it's not being utilized at all. And they were supposed to have already returned it. They should have never took it, but they were supposed to have already returned it. So I'm hoping that these are just simple steps to go forward, to move forward, and to continue. My other, I'm just going to bring it out, lay it on the table, is the Ouachita. They keep saying it's a battlefield, and of course it wasn't. It was a massacre site. So, you know, the name changes, and those names, those labels, like Max was talking about earlier, like the prisoner label, those labels have everything to do with everything. I think that, honestly, that we need to take looks, you know, at those kind of things too, because that was not a battlefield. And I would like to have that change. And I've spoke to Ms. Firecloud about it. Matter of fact, Max and myself met with her up in Washington, D.C. in last March. So we've spoken about it, so it has come out, but I'm just, you know, putting it out there for y'all.
Bobby Gonzalez, Chairman, Caddo Nation.
You're going to have to repeat the question.
So, what are ways that Park Service and local institutions can continue collaboration and engage in co-stewardship with Indigenous people?
Since you asked the question, I think the way that you phrased the question is very methodically thought out, related to a thought, what is consultation and what is engagement. We've been fighting, you know, a lot of rules and regulations for years. There always seems to be some rule or regulation that may not fit right, related to the methodology of universities and institutions that look at consultation engagement properly. And so I think that, you know, for the Caddo tribe, Caddo Nation, as most tribes across the United States, there's been some of us that's been in the battlefield and trying to get the National Park Service, as well as other agencies within the Department of Bureau, the Bureau of, you know, a lot of people don't know in this room, the Department of Interior has a lot of agencies underneath that department, one of them being the National Park Service that holds probably around 85,000 acres that they manage, and that government-to-government consultation hasn't really worked. And so consultation is a given under the law, under certain laws like Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, government-to-government relations under 13175. It's an executive order signed by the President of the United States. There's a lot of different laws that play into one of the reasons, too, why we're here. But at the same time, I think the whole thought process is, what's the right thing to do, right? And so we're here today to talk about engagement, how we can go further along with the university and co-steward and protect and preserve these sites and the knowledge. And there's intellectual knowledge, traditional knowledge, that who are we to tell you that? That's what they've told us, right? Who are you to come into our community and ask us those specific questions? And so what we've done is, over the years, the law would say, like under the National Historic Preservation Act, is you may consult with a tribe. We changed that to shall. And so the shall it's a small word, but now it's under federal rule. And so the National Park, that includes the National Park Service, so I applaud you for that. And the engagement and co-stewardship, if you heard from one tribe, you heard from one tribe. If you heard from one community, you heard from one community. But you're hearing the same thing, right? You're hearing there's the broken trust, there's the broken treaties, there's the imprisonment, there's the historical trauma. And I think the best thing that we can do is continue doing what you're doing in the room to build on that. And you may want to think about possibly entering into a joint memorandum of understanding with the tribes that attach themselves historically to the prison, the facility here in this area, and come up with an agreement that allows you, and it could be a co-op agreement of a memorandum that says that once a year you're going to get together and then you're going to discuss what sites look like, the interpretation of these areas, along with the tribes, and let them really participate in what we see across the board in the United States related to making those things happen. It gives you a jumping off point, because I'm an elected leader. One thing that I'm always going to be is I'm always going to be Haine Hasine de Dako, Hasine Shui, Gonadiska, Gonadisjo, Gonahako, Gonahatido, in these 4 directions. I'm going to be who I am. But sometimes we move on in life, or when the Creator takes us, you don't have to start at 0 again. You'll have something in your hand. And I want to thank everyone here in Norene, for doing the things that she's brought us together. Make no mistake about it, there are those that's pioneered the way before myself, those that are in this room that are pioneering their own way through a process that getting their head wrapped around, especially the young people, and how we've been fighting these issues for a long time. Just so that you know, the Caddo Nation, we have over 154 museums across the United States that has collections of our own ancestors, and they come from a lot of these federal lands. And so coming here is, it's tough. It has a lot of emotion to it. It's something that we're not going to forget. It's something that it's embedded into us for life. So just continue learning and sharing with one another, and I think that's the best thing you could do. And I want to thank the Rosebud Sioux and for giving our relative that's online here a job that's important across the United States for all our tribal people.
Bobby turns to Lori.
Thanks.
Dorothy, would you like to add that? I know yesterday you said doing
Yeah.
one of the things that
I can. One of, when I first, we were talking about this the other day amongst the Circle group, which is the employee resource group of tribal employees within the National Park Service, and just how far we've come in some areas and how far we're lacking in other areas. And when it comes to interpretation, I remember when I first came to the Park Service, a few of the parks had signage there that, you'd walk into a visitor center and they'd have a sign, "We are still here," and they tell a little bit of the story of the tribes, but that was it. That was all you received. There wasn't any acknowledgement that these were tribal lands or other indigenous lands. And so we've, come quite a ways, but we still have a long ways to go. The vast majority of our visitors really appreciate hearing these stories told by tribal people. They like it being told in the first instance, because who better to tell these stories than the tribal people themselves? They're the ones that it's their ancestors. They've lived this life. They've lived these stories. And to hear it from that perspective is just so much richer than anything that we can do as National Park Rangers. And so, I really want to thank Superintendent Wilson and his staff there, because they've really gone out to make an effort to make sure that the tribal stories will be told. And Director Sams, who is our first Native American Park Service director, has really made an effort too when it comes to like NAGPRA repatriations. He sent out an internal memorandum to have all of that done by the end of the year, with just even getting the listing and acknowledgement that we're not complete in that area done yet. We'll be completing a tribal consultation policy by the end of this month, which is the first time within the National Park Service that we will have our own tribal consultation policy. We've always done it under the Department of Interior policy before. And Director Sam said that he remembered talking to Secretary Udall way back when, a few decades ago, about the fact that the Park Service needed a tribal consultation policy. And he never thought that he'd actually be the director sitting in that chair when the policy finally got done, but here we are. So, there's a lot that we have to do. There's a lot of engagement, and what the park staff there is doing is really something to be proud of because of, how far you've gotten. But now what we need to do is institutionalize that. So once the superintendent leaves, or like Stephen leaves, or anybody else, I am gone, that it continues. We all will change in our positions. The tribal representatives will change as well. But if we can get it institutionalized, then we'll know that it goes on once we're gone. So,
Point of personal privilege. I'd like to note that Ms. Firecloud is looking underneath a sacred site for the Koigu people.
yeah.
Devil's Tower is known as Tsotigh, Rock Above. And that is one of our creation stories that we tell about the Tsotigh, the creation of the Big Dipper, related to who we are as Koigu. That is a significant sacred site for our people. Aho.
Thank you. Thank you all. I wanted to note, too, that if you're not aware of it, because funding is an issue for all of us, right? So I just wanted to point out that this 6-year process began as part of a 5-year agreement. It was a Cooperative Ecosystem Studies Unit grant between the Park Service and different faculty members at Flagler College. So it was meant to be an interdisciplinary collaborative approach. So that funding opportunity was made available by the Park Service to come in and do that. So this is a funding source that's available to people working with other parks as well. So I wanted to point that out. Okay, so this question will be easier to keep in mind, and I probably will only have to say it once, but that is, what would you like to see with the future of this collaboration?
The panelists turn to each other. Martina adjusts her microphone and speaks.
Well, again, just want to say thank you again for the National Park Service, and glad to see you, Miss Dorothy. I can't even think. But definitely is this a good time for us to be Native people with the government connections that we have, with Chuck Sams being in Director of National Park Service. He's also OU alumni. So he's also Umatilla. I'm also Umatilla. And definitely glad to have Auntie Deb in office too as Secretary of Interior. Just amazing time for Native people and to be able to have these connections, but definitely building a good relationship with the National Park Service. And again, like I said, I got to meet with Steve last night there at Fort Marion and just sharing our stories, just having a good conversation about our experiences of the boarding school, after a lot of them returned home and the effects that boarding school came about. We're talking earlier with our elders here, and that's what, my great-grandmother, she was kidnapped by the government. She was just outside her teepee, and next thing you know, the wagons came. She never talked about boarding school, never talked about, language. We'd ask her, how do you say this? How do you say that? And she was like, no, you don't need to know those things. But we had to know commands and demands, but not other words in between. And so just to knowing her trauma, she was 98 when she passed away, but very sharp mind and everything. And wasn't until her last year that she started to talk about the boarding school when she referred to when the wagons came. And that's exactly how our prisoners were taken by wagon, from Fort Sill, and that's where they established the boarding school, Fort Sill Indian School. And so just to seeing what our prisoners, experienced when they arrived here, what they do, they cut their hair. That's what they did to the kids there. They took off their clothes. And like in our ways, it's taboo to be naked in front of other people. And that's what they were, at the boarding school. Same thing, So just being able to share our stories to the rangers when they do have visitors, and just to have a little bit of insight to what our ancestors experienced, the trauma, and it's still affecting us today. We still have boarding schools. My great-grandmother went to boarding school. My mother went to boarding school. Well, my grandmother, my mother, and then I ended up working at Indian School, Riverside Indian School in Anadarko, and just to seeing all these kids come from all across the country to Oklahoma to the operating boarding school today, and so, but it's a good place for a lot of kids, it's a safe haven for a lot of them, unfortunately, but definitely building that relationship with the park services here and all the other places that we have considered sacred sites. A lot of us tribes, the Kiowas, the Comanches, Caddos, we do overlay a lot of our territorial places. So we do a lot of intertribal consultation meetings. So from Colorado, we're always together. So I've done a lot with Jacob, and glad to see Max here. I got to see his name a lot, but not to meet him in person. And so I've met with a lot of different tribes that we overlap. And so just the buildings of relationships with a lot of the park service, we're thankful. But yeah, the interpretation is a big factor, and definitely, like I said, to have like maybe intertribal historical marker that can be able to say, you know, I know that's what I think the Kiowas want to repatriate their loved ones back home, and it's hard to know, you know, whenever you can't identify who it might be. And so definitely that would be some interest to us as well if it's possible. But just knowing, you know, the boarding school era that came in after this, and we did have one of our tribal member citizens go up to Hampton Institute, and so learning the skills that he had to learn, and then the other ones, once they return, you know, how life changed back on the reservation and how things formally came into allotments. And so just being able to tell our story down here in Florida, so far away from home, and again, just trying to build that relationship. When we do like go to Colorado, we just met with the Rockies not too long ago, and just being able to educate our kids back home of the plants and the animals and those things that we utilize in those areas that aren't in our homeland and our reservation area. So just again, just building that relationship and being able to have, you know, educational materials that we can maybe come back. And we're trying to work it out with different park services to maybe do Zoom lessons. And we met with other rangers that, you know, want to be able to show, you know, what our kids, again, we have our own charter school. We just opened 3 years ago, and it's successful. My son's 5 years old, and learning our language is beautiful, and he's craving it, and he gets mad because I don't know what he's saying, but he'll like, call my teacher, it's 9 o'clock at night, and everything. I can't understand some words he says to begin with, but trying to learn that the Comanche language is beautiful. But, you know, again, like I said, with the 9-year-old tour group and seeing a girl here and her experiences here, you know, I didn't get to see the face mask yet and everything. But another thing I was just at the University of Oklahoma 2 weeks ago, and the Peabody Museum was there, and they had said that there was an organization that wanted to make a replica of the face mask with the family's permission, and they wanted to have a descendant to do a replica of their face too, and they said they were going to donate back to the tribes, and I didn't know if anybody was here or knew anything about that. That was like 2 weeks ago. Okay.
That would be Miss Isaacs.
Okay.
Marion.
Good. Sure. Good. All right. Good deal. But yes, definitely, you know, I've heard the ones that did see the face mask and how impactful it is, and definitely, like you said, getting mad to see the little kid. Oh my gosh, just tears coming down just thinking about something like that. But I appreciate the time at all.
Well, I would like to see it become an annual event, much like 9/11 is commemorated in New York City, and much like Gettysburg is memorialized every year. It's significant enough for us as Native people and as community to share and to grow and to build together a new future based on new knowledge, new information, and to help others to have an understanding of the atrocities that have been encountered in our past, and that we have risen from those through the what we saw with the yesterday's presentation of the ledger art. How something good can come from something so repressive. And so I think that there are organizations that would be willing to help support the efforts that have been undertaken here in recent years in order to help engage our community, help restore our native tribes, and to help build something positive that can create that focus of creativity and energy that can help to stimulate a new way, a new thought, and a new idea.
Norene speaks.
I was speaking with that our elder here that was talking about the boarding school, and her mother was talking about she'd been in boarding school and stuff. There's and then Martina was talking about her her children and their new school. I think Amy, where's Amy? Okay, well, Amy, when she done the presentation down here for those kids, I think that, maybe that might be something that we want to bring to Oklahoma, that kind of thing. So, and it doesn't have to be specifically this, but something in that nature. And, I think that there's a lot of things that we can do, and we want to continue to do these things, and we want to continue to work towards things. I know that we are, Amy and Max and myself, again, I have volunteered Max. Max is going to help, and we're going to do something over at the cemetery. We have 2 things to do at the cemetery, and then I believe Amy and Mike Scher and I are doing some more intergenerational trauma stuff, some more work. I was allowed to do videos at Joseph Hart Prison of the prisoners there, and there's a lot of stuff that intertwines with all the stuff that has happened. I know that, and then you was talking about, I was blessed enough to be able to go with Max, and that's where I met Gwen, was in D.C. at the Smithsonian, and I got to see the masks. So, we could sit and we could look at these masks, and we could see people from our community now in these masks. And we could say, well, this one looks like, and that's so-and-so, that's got to be so-and-so's relation, because they look just alike, and it was just, this kind of work is heavy, and yes, but I think with a lot of prayer and a lot more work and a lot more conversations, because I don't think this is going to be enough time to do a conversation on everything or hit every highlight that we need to hit. But I do think that I think we can continue to work through this. And I think, did you say once a year? Is that what you said?
At least.
At least once a year, having some kind of consultation, with all the tribes involved. And a historical marker is doable. It's so doable. It's just doable. I think also the graves, and Amy and I have been discussing for quite a few years about the headstone, and honestly, I don't want it removed the way it is. Personally, that's just my personal opinion. It's not me, though. It's got to be everybody. But, and then adding to, I would like to put specific names and dates, not on those markers, but make another totally different marker for each individual. But that's just a suggestion, and that's just it's up to everybody collectively, all the tribes. It's up to everybody. It can't just be me and my input. So, but that's kind of where I'm at with that. But thank y'all.
I already forgot the question.
Oh my.
Did you hear what she asked? She asked what would we like to see for the future of this collaboration? That's a really tough question. You're talking about how many, how long has it been since, 6 years doesn't equate for the number of years of unrecognizing the fact that our relatives were held prisoners here. The prisoners that were held here are, my children represent 14 tribes, and the tribes that they represent, for the nucleus of most of it, is sitting right here, that are blood related to the prisoners that have been in this prison. I believe the best thing, again, you can continue to do is to engage with each tribe, with the community, with the religious and cultural practitioners of the tribe. So much weight is given to science and research related to archaeology, anthropology, and science. But if you don't include the very people that you're studying, because just like archaeology, it is the study of past human behavior. If you leave out a community, you miss out a big picture. And you're talking about these masks. Really, you're masking yourself in the United States and the real history of really what happened here. More than, if you look at right now what's going on across the world with Hamas and what's going on with Israel, more Native Americans have died at the hands here in the United States than any other race in the world. Over 100 million Native Americans were killed here on this land. And what we were doing was to protect our land as warriors and as people, living together, dying together, and having families together. So that engagement that it's going to take everyone in this room when you walk out this door not to forget. Unfortunately, like he had mentioned, you got a grant. Consultation and as far as the National Park Service and, consultation is a given, but also the National Park Service is on the hook federally to consult with the tribes that are historic or aboriginally from the area of the areas that you manage. And if you need more money, you should ask for it. If you need more partnerships related to the university and the community as far as how to partner with the tribes, I'm sure that if it is feasible and acceptable between the tribes, that we provide letters of support as well, and we can partner on some of those grants because they are competitive, and that's something that you can think about in the future. I was thinking about the 6 unknown soldiers. Well, daho hano, 3 and 3 are people. How do you say different things in our language? How do you maneuver in that world? So I just want to encourage you to continue to at least meet once a year. The worst thing you could do is stop. And I think that you really need to look collectively and listen to everything that everyone's saying and come up with a list and some action plans and build on what we have to tell the true story of what has happened to the tribes, because that way we can stop fighting in these wars around the world. Because when you don't understand cultures, when you don't understand different identities and groups and communities, it starts confrontations, and that's what we're seeing today. So I just want to say that much.
Cool.
Dorothy, did you want to add anything to that, the future of the collaboration?
So from the National Park Service perspective, in the Washington office at least, it's making sure that the park has the funding to sustain this into the future. Because right now, I think Flagler College has been helping out quite a bit, but we don't have like a base amount for the park, and that's what we need to have done. And so this year we worked with the National Park Foundation, and they are able to get the funding together. And I think we'll be able to do that for a few more years, and they'll give us time then internally to work on ensuring that the park has enough base funding to get, to make sure that the event continues into the future. One of the other things that I forgot to mention was that I really think that the story of how boarding schools began and Pratt's role in that really needs to be told along with these other stories to understand how boarding schools were really built upon on a fort that was to hold people as prisoners, and that's pretty much what the kids were and what they were subjected to and stuff. And so I think that's a really important part of the story that needs to be told at that place. Thank you.
There's something else that just for the tribes that are in here and the tribes that are up here on this panel, you heard what she had said about funding for the next 6 years. Unlike the National Park Service, tribes are sovereign, and they can lobby Congress to ask for those dollars to continue managing and continue to do the right thing. So as long as we know that there's issues, we can ask for those congressional dollars to be appropriated to the park so that it'll allow us to continue what we need to do.
Yep.
Yes.
Lori points to an audience member. Lori steps down from her podium and carries a microphone over to Dorothy Whitehorse DeLon, who sits in the audience.
I'm from the Kiowa tribe of Oklahoma.
Martina removes her microphone from its stand. A woman takes the microphone and runs it over to Dorothy.
Swan. His name was Swan, the owl prophet. He's been incarcerated here. I got to visit his gravesite the other day, thanks to you people. For the first time, my hopes were I'm the last living descendant. I'm 91 years old this year. My mother, who was his granddaughter, left us in 1984, so I just gave up all hope and that I could get him repatriated some way so he could come back with his people. And Vice Chairman, I talked to him today. Maybe we'll have something worked out and I can do it on my own, but I would just like to know repatriation. Never mind the ways and outs. I'll find help. But I don't want to leave him here. They were afraid of masks because they thought there was a death mask. A lot of people made replicas of their face. Lone Wolf and White Horse rebelled. Those were my grandfathers too. They rebelled and they were put in a dungeon or something for 20 days without food or water. And they were punished for that. And this is all I have left of the old days. I'd like to see it happen. But they said they don't know who I would go to as the last descendant. Who do I go to? I'm the last one.
I think that's addressed in an NAGPRA, and that's something that we can certainly submit and seek the resources necessary if that's the request that is made.
Lori returns to her podium. Jacob points to direct her to someone in the audience. Bobby speaks.
So I just want to add just a little bit of what she had said. Lineal descendancy comes into play when you're dealing with the Native American Graves Protection Repatriation Act, although there hasn't been an inventory related to the individual that's related to our Kiowa relative who's a descendant of this individual. Although the lineal descendancy is bar none correct because she can prove lineal descendancy. So those are a lot of legal questions too related to the law the university and the park would have. So you have a member here that's talking about lineal descendancy under the law, and I think that probably you need to have a healthy conversation about that, and in another form, in another fashion. And this is a good jumping off point with the tribes, but some of this is so sensitive related to our sovereignty and our own tribe and families. I remember not too long ago, Harvard wanted to do an exhibit of all the busts in New York City, and we had families still tied to these individuals, and we disagreed. So I just want to mention that about the lineal descendancy piece.
Yeah. The gentleman had a question.
Honest.
Lori crosses the room to bring a microphone to Ionis Sipes. Ionis tests the microphone and it doesn't work.
Comment.
Lori takes the microphone. Ionis follows her to the front of the room where he tests another microphone, which doesn't work either. A woman brings him a third microphone. Text, Ionis Sipes, descendant of prominent man, Caddo tribe member.
Here, take this.
I have two comments. I have two comments that about this. It was mentioned briefly, but one of the things I think it's really, really important that everyone knows is that Fort Marion was the prototype boarding school. That the boarding school established was created at Fort Marion. That was Pratt's experiment with these captives here, and that's something that wasn't talked about in this discussion here. It was hit on just a little bit, but that's one that we definitely need to talk about because the impact of boarding schools across this entire continent started at Fort Marion. So that's the first one. But the second one is that the federal policy for Indian country also started at Fort Marion. And so the 5 tribes that are here have had a huge impact on every tribe and how that impacts everyone. Now, that's the project that I'm working on with my little humble group, but that's something that we're willing to share and also be a part of. But that's something that we need to talk about because it impacted everybody, which I think is important because it's not just the impact, but also the contribution that we can have in sharing this information. So the boarding schools and also the federal policy first began here at Fort Marion.
It actually began after the Civil War, as they began to have the dilemma of what to do with the large number of soldiers that were still available. And so Grant initiated the peace policy, which was to impose federal control over Western Dominion as a part of the manifest destiny that was so politically correct in those days. So it actually began in the mid-1860s.
Manifest destiny, what's that? I went to high school with his son. But the other one is I think this is one I just want to share because I think it's funny. In the letters that went between Pratt and his superiors, those letters are the ones that started building that federal policy for Indian country. There's one letter that describes they're having social dances that are getting out of hand. We don't want them to act this way. What can we do to shut down these social dances? The letter number was 49. So. That's true. It's a true.
And I want to mention.
Have you ever been to a 49?
I want to follow up to Max's presentation when he said that we are captives, that we weren't at war because we had entered into treaties with the government, and that was the way the government controlled us. They didn't win a specific battle to gain control over our people. They gained control through those documents that were signed illegitimately. And I think that it was all a process. Fort Marion was a process of winning the hearts and minds of our native people. They were intent on intimidating and coercing us. And then they brought those men here as a show of power and authority over our people. And they intimidated us to win us into submission. And so it's a policy of hearts and minds that the government had as part of that practice of dislodging us thousands of miles, bringing us into this terrifying country. Sorry, St. Augustine. But it was so new to them, and they relayed that back to their people. You know, you better behave because this could happen to you.
Lori and Norene speak at the same time.
Okay,
emasculated our
I just
men.
wanted to have you, again, those were structured questions that we came up with, and that wasn't the idea. The idea is we wanted to hear from and learn from you. So I would just like to ask each of you to share some final thoughts with us. Norene, you will be the last. You will have the last word here. So,
okay.
So before we go to that, we have one more question or comment.
Text Rita Kusuun, Comanche Nation. Lori brings the microphone to Rita in the audience.
It's not a question or a comment. There's several things that I want to add to what's being said up there. The first one is with this mask situation that was, I don't know who started it, where it come from, where they were doing the face masks of some of the leaders and the people. That should have never happened. Never. You know, there are certain things that are going on that should not be going on because I won't say taboo, I'll just say that there are rights and wrongs about a lot of things. And to me, and from where I was raised and going, where I come from, you do not do that. That person that you made his mask out of, he didn't ask for that. That is not right for you to take and make those masks of these people and display them. They should not be done. And whoever's doing that needs to cut it off, put it away, and get rid of those things because you're disgracing those ones that have left here by doing that to them. It's just like putting them on display when they're not here to protect themselves. And I think it's wrong for whoever's idea that was to start making those masks to think, oh, well, we're going to make masks of them and display them out here, put them on pedestals or something. And that to me is disgraceful. And I just wanted to let y'all know whoever's in charge of all that stuff needs to stop it and needs to be done. Those masks need to be buried or put away ceremonially, however y'all do it, because that's disgracing those ones that left here. And another thing that's very important to me personally, and it bothers me a lot sometimes, is to when people are gone and they left here, we're not supposed to be talking, mentioning their names anymore. We're not supposed to every year display their names, so-and-so, so-and-so, because you're not leaving them alone. You're holding them back from being where they need to go. And that's what they're doing in that 9/11 thing. That's not none of my business. That's white man stuff. But in our Indian way, we don't do that to our people, because you're holding them back from being able to go to the other side of the how I would say English. English gets in my way sometimes. Over to me, I know they're gone to the better place. They're in the spirit world, but they can't go over because they're not letting them. Somebody needs to tell them people up at 9/11, let those people go. They want to rest. They're tired of waiting for you to let them go home. Nobody's going to do that, I guess. But I tell you what, in our Indian way, we don't do that to them. We don't get out here and say their name every time we turn around. Am I wrong? Any other tribes besides me? Our Comanches, we don't do that because we respect them. We want them to, we know where they're at. We know what's going on. Spiritually, they're not here anymore. But you're hanging on to them when you don't let them go. Sorry, but I just had to bring that out.
Thank you.
For those of you that don't know in this room, the United States, actually it was the United States government and the general in Washington, D.C. During the Indian Wars had, when they took these people as prisoners, the Surgeon General ordered that all these prisoners that must be taken of them before they were sent to Fort Marion to be hung, tried, shot, and killed. And all these busts of these people that have their names on these busts that represents families that are in this room, they still exist. And when you see them, it is very, very, very emotional. It takes your breath away. And people don't understand the feelings that we have. And it's tough. And so I just wanted to let those that in the room that don't know where that came from, it was the Surgeon General in the war. And also to take heads. They actually, shot our people in the head and took their skulls and sent them to Washington, D.C. to do cranial metrics and to study their skulls. That was it's an atrocity. And today we are trying to do our best to repatriate our people and bring them home and bury them closest to where they come from.
Bobby turns to Lori. Lori nods in response and turns to address the audience.
Okay, so if we wanted to go through the final thoughts, I will not be speaking again. So let me just thank you again on behalf of Flagler College for coming here and the Park Service and UCF. We're very grateful to everyone who came and shared their stories and participated and listened and learned. And I will pass it off to Martina if you share your final thoughts.
Martina adjusts her microphone and speaks.
Well, it's just been a great discussion to be able to be here with you all, and I'm just thankful for the efforts Norene has put forth and just being able to collaborate. I'm glad to be here with you all. Definitely just seeing the opportunity to be able to share these experiences with the local tourists is definitely a stepping stone. Again, just to be able to see the foundation of the cultural genocide that was placed upon our people, and then like for the formations of these boarding schools, and just being able to see the government policies enforced that has brought so much trauma and for our tribal nations. And so now today, education is the key, just to being able to recognize what's happened and being able to work with their school systems, not even for the state of Florida, but even back in Oklahoma. That's what we hope to be able to share our story in the public schools. And again, in Oklahoma, you hear about always just the civilized tribes. You really don't hear about the other plains tribes west of I-35. But we are the savages. But I am from the Quahada band. We're the last Comanche band to surrender and come from Chief Wild Horse Kobe. And so just knowing, like they had talked about, Polidoro Canyon, we will be working with, it will be 150 years this coming year of the 150 years of the Red River Wars. And so that's what we're looking forward to, collaborating with the Kiowas and the Cheyenne Arapahos on telling our story. And so Texas Tech University is really wanting to work with us and be able to share more of our history there. And just again, being the presence of here is just sad to understand, but I'm glad that we are building this relationship and foundation. And so definitely looking forward to building a better relationship and seeing how we can work together with the other tribes too to share our story. Rocco.
I'm grateful and humbled to have been able to be a part of this momentous event. It's very sobering and sombering to reflect back upon the horror and tragedy it must have been a part of that experience. But I thank Steve and Gordy and their staff for collaborating with our tribal historic preservation officers. And I apologize to Amanda, as I acknowledged the role of anthropologists in the lives of our American Indian people when we first met. But this is a very significant reminder of what can be accomplished when we collaborate, truly collaborate. And I think that's the thing that we can learn from this, is that by having everyone who has a role to be at the table to discuss how these events unfold, how impactful certain segments of the program could be, is helpful in moving forward and guiding us with a vision that is positive, that is fruitful, and that benefits all of our communities. So I thank all the tribes, the tribal leaders that were represented, our royalty that has been represented in her voice, and those who have allowed us to hear some of their painful feelings that they have held within them. I know, my friend Quentin and his family have a historic connection here through the journey of Roman Nose. And so we all gain a lot when we're able to openly discuss things in a way that is sensitive to others and yet revealing in our hearts and in our minds about how things should flow. So I'm grateful for all that has been discussed and the potential for things to come. Aho.
Martina, Jacob, and Norene turn to Bobby as he addresses the audience.
Well, again, I want to thank the Creator, Jesus Christ, for allowing us to be here, to come here, see my elders, our relatives here, the way that they talk, the way that we used to hear them talk to us. A lot of them are gone. Have respect for them, love them, and glad to see all our tribes here, all our tribal elected leaders. I appreciate you being here. From the Caddo Nation, as the chairman of the nation, it's by supply and demand that I'm here, unfortunately. And so I'm glad to be here. But from the Caddo Nation, we ceded in 1835 our land to the United States government, which was over 1 million acres. All of northwest Louisiana, southwest Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma, and all of East Texas is our Aboriginal homeland. And then to be made prisoners of war and to come back here, and it's a full circle for me. And I appreciate Osnes. I don't know if I said that right, on the Cheyenne side. And I'm going to come up with a name for you on your Caddo side. We're going to get there. But it's been a full circle, because, you know, I was in my teenage years when I went to Harvard and had an experience that I'll never forget. And as a chairman to come back here, it's really tough. Because I've probably seen more, unfortunately, human remains dug up or in collections than most people in this room in my life. And it's tough. But I just wish that you can continue, and really glad to be here. And if there's anything that we can do to continue to help, we'll do it. And like I said yesterday, we're not going anywhere. You know, I got my kaku sitting over there, my grandma on my Comanche side, kaku over there on my Kiowa side. You know, our relatives here. You want to see a real fight? Try to say something crazy to them. My brother sitting over here, different relatives. That's the way we are. You know, we're going to protect our people. And our Caddo people, too, all our people. Appreciate being here. Thank you.
Dorothy Firecloud speaks through Zoom.
Okay, since Norene's going last, I guess I'm up next, right? I really appreciated, participating in person last year and this year, and I promise I'll be there in person next year. And I'm really hoping to bring one of our new NPS employees, who's a young Comanche man, Jared Watney. He's now working in the Denver, well, he's stationed out of Oklahoma, but he's working with our rural trails and conservation group there. And so I was talking to him this morning, and he said that he had worked on some of the topics that were being discussed. And so I've invited him, and I'll be sure to bring him with me next year. But what I appreciate most about this is the ability of the tribes to really be able to start just telling their true full history of this place. And it's just such a good way to start healing. And that's what we really need in these places, is to really truly heal. And I listened to the grandmother there talking about, her relative and stuff. And those stories are really hard to hear. And when you're sitting on this side of the table and listening to that, it doesn't make it any easier. And so, I appreciate the work that the Park Service is doing there and really getting this started in a good way to get that healing completed. So thank you.
Lori gestures to Norene. Norene addresses the audience.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's come. I want to thank the Kiowas, the Caddo, and the Comanche for coming and bringing and sharing their truths with us and sharing these things with us that we needed to hear. I appreciate everything that you taught me this year, and I do appreciate every word that you said, and hopefully my prayers for each one of you is not to forget what you felt here, not to forget what you heard here, and please feel free to contact me, because if you don't, I will call you. And if I've got your cell, no, I'm going to text you. But thank you so much. I want to thank Steve and Gordy. I want to thank Amy and Mike. I want to thank everybody that's here that came today. I want to thank Lori and where's Julie? Julie. And I would like to thank Gwen Isaacs for coming. She came from Smithsonian from D.C. She came down here just to look on and to see what we were doing and what we were about. So I want to thank every one of my people, my own tribal people, for coming all this way. I pray for you to have safe journeys home. We'll see you over at the fort to do the final commemoration.
Jacob leads the panelists in song.
Aho de ko go they do tahito Monde yato go me Yatoga ome, Yatoga ome, Konde, they do tatono, Yatoga ome, no, Aho de kogo, they do tahito. The English word is Kiowa, or the Son of God made a way for me. He made a way for me. I'm grateful He made a way for me. Humbly, I've been praying, and with thankfulness, I'll continue to pray that He made a way for me. I hope.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.